Hello, ladies and gents, boys and girls, people of all sexual identities and orientations, and welcome back to another Doctor Who review. And today's review is 73 yards. Apologies for the lateness on this review, but whew, it's been a hell of a weekend, and I was at Comic Con the other day. So, yeah, without further ado, let's jump straight into the review. So, the Doctor and Ruby land in Wales, or as its other words known, Cymru, and the pair of them discover a mysterious circle of objects and items all lined in a row. And whilst talking, the Doctor accidentally stands on the circle and breaks it. In doing so, this causes the Doctor to vanish and leave poor Ruby Sunday all by herself. I don't know how he done it, man. I don't know how you can just do this to Ruby. But without getting too emotional, Ruby Sunday is left all by herself. But not for long, when all of a sudden a mysterious person appears on the hill, making gestures in her direction. Ruby naturally calls over to the person, hoping to find out what they want and why they're there. But soon what seems to be a mysterious and unexpected stranger begins to turn Ruby's life around. As the woman begins to follow Ruby 73 yards everywhere she goes, 73 yards apart, vanishing and going and vanishing and going, vanishing and going, and Ruby, baffled by this, decides to head to a local tavern to escape. But in doing so, she doesn't realize the horror she's unleashed upon the village. The horror she's unleashed upon the people who get to know her. When she arrives at the pub, the locals tell her the story of a mad Jack. A bad Jack. An old madman who lived in the village long ago but has died. But then they point out that half of the story of what they've told her is a joke, and that they should never be judged by their folk tales, and that everything should be taken with a pinch of salt. But even after all that's happened, Ruby still has a sneaky suspicion that this mysterious stranger is more than meets the eye. So she asks one of the locals when he leaves the pub to go and ask if she knows anything about the Doctor and where he's gone, and if she could leave Ruby alone. The man steps outside and greets the woman, but soon seems to run in an opposite direction, as if she's said something so horrifying, something so scary, that it knocks him out of his wits. This isn't the first time it happens, though. It also happened with a woman on the hill whilst hiking, and seems to continue in a cycle anywhere that Ruby goes. Any time that Ruby asks people to ask the woman why she's stalking her. Even Carla, Ruby's mother, runs off in a cab, absolutely horrified at Ruby. Something this woman is saying is driving people mad, driving people insane, causing people to leave Ruby and isolate her from them. Ruby eventually decides to get on with her life, but soon finds herself broken and left in despair, circling around a world that she no longer knows. She even gets advice from Kate to help with her situation, but sadly, this goes to no abode, as everything topples in and over and over and over on itself. But soon, the problem of being stalked and everyone that Ruby ever knew or ever loved breaking up with her and isolating themselves becomes the lesser problem. As a politician a Ministry of War politician, who the Doctor had previously mentioned at the beginning of the episode, becomes very, very important. Ruby, whilst looking on the news one day, hears the politician joke, calling himself Bad Jack. She takes this as the incentive that maybe if she works her way into his party, if she slides her way into his accomplishments, that maybe she can turn the tides, maybe she can destroy his political aims once and for all. Bad Jack states throughout this whole story that he aims to use nuclear missiles as he no longer sees NATO or any other country as a viable option for the future of the United Kingdom. He believes that the United Kingdom should arm themselves against any attacks and should become a military state, to which Ruby soon finds a way of overturning by getting the woman who's been stalking her to stand 73 yards next to him, opposite her on a football pitch. This drives Bad Jack insane and causes him to run off at his most political, highest moment. No one knowing why he left, but Ruby knowing that she had done a good thing. Eventually, Ruby would grow older and older, getting on with her life, still being stalked by the same woman 73 yards from her, but soon finding herself in a incomprehensible position. Her life passing her by, estranged by everything that had happened to her and all her family who had left her behind. She found herself back on the cliffside, watching the grave of the TARDIS as it stood tall as a monument upon the rocks, left abandoned and unalive. Ruby would eventually go to a hospital and live her last moments, knowing she had very little time left, and the woman would no longer be 73 yards, but would soon glowing closer as the lights began to fade and flicker, and eventually the woman and her would become one, as she faded into time, her new reality crumbling apart, and soon Ruby, or the spirit of Ruby, would warn her younger self and the Doctor not to trample on the shrine. This in turn reverses everything that has happened and allows the Doctor and Ruby to have more adventures through time and through space itself. So now for the moment you've all been waiting for. 73 yards. Is it a good story? Yes. Yes, it is. It personally reminds me a lot of Turn Left and a lot of episodes of the Sarah Jane Adventures where the world has been twisted and turned and everyone is turning against you. Specifically, this kind of reminds me of the Curse of Clyde Langer. So yeah, I love that element of it, but I feel like the lack of words that we could actually hear does make this story a bit of a struggle to understand. Also, the lack of the politician in the beginning of the story kind of makes you struggle to understand where the story was going. But I do love what they did with it. I do love that Carla and Kate and the hiking woman and just anyone in general who comes into contact with this woman who is 73 yards away. I do love how that is portrayed, and I do love how they are driven mad throughout the story. Millie Gibson's performance as Ruby Sunday in this is astounding. Her ability to act and her ability to take on this responsibility surrounding her as she goes into this world completely new to herself, and just her ability to to show the isolation and the struggle her character goes through in this story is phenomenal. But for the reasons I mentioned earlier, I'm gonna have to slightly downscore this episode at a 7 out of 10. But other than that, 73 yards was incredible. Big up to Millie Gibson, and thank you everyone for watching. I will see you in the next Doctor Who review. Until then, stay beautiful.